Friends, welcome to another interview with Mr. H.G. Tudor. And this is the final part of the little cult series that we've been working on called The Seduction of the Cult. And the final part here being the extraction slash escape slash healing process. So, what the hell are we talking about? Basically, what I've been doing with HG is describing my experience growing up in the global human trafficking slash mafia esque cult called Scientology. My father got into it when I was 9 and spread the mind virus to the rest of the family. I grew up in Scientology and got out in a single day in my mid 30s. And hopefully, the listener will be able to relate, even if they don't grow up in a cult. Because is it not true, HG, that it's essentially the same? I think we discussed this in the previous broadcast. Growing up in a cult can be similar to a one-on-one cult-like dynamic. Is it not a one-on-one relationship and a cult of one if you're with a
Absolutely.
narcissist?
That's right, Doug. The dynamic that takes place between the victim and the narcissist is essentially cult-like. It just doesn't have the number of members involved. So that victim becomes brainwashed by a combination of the manipulations that are used by the narcissist and also their own emotional thinking, which causes them to be clouded to what actually is going on, that keeps them within the dynamic, because both individuals need to get something out of it for it to work. So the narcissist gets the prime aims as the cult leader of that cult of one, controlling that person more readily, drawing the fuel from them, getting the character traits and residual benefits. And for the victim, they initially are treated very well, and they think that they found someone that cares about them, loves them, all those other things as well. So they're getting something out of it, but also their addiction to the narcissist, where they're an empathic victim, is being fed. So both parties in that mini cult are getting their needs attended to.
Very interesting. Can you expand on that a little bit? What needs was I, for example, getting out of kind of being in a cult that seemed like you said they love bomb you at the beginning, so it
Mhm.
seems like you found honey, but then it turns and then you can't see, or at least I couldn't, what I was involved in, and I continued to, like Stockholm syndrome, love my abuser. So what do you that's such a great point you bring up. What was I getting out of it, or what does somebody in an abusive relationship with a narcissist get out of it?
Okay. So at the outset, as you rightly identify, when you're getting the love bombing, when you're going through the seduction, first and foremost, you, as we'd established for you, you're also an empath, and therefore you have an addiction to narcissists. So your addiction is getting fed, and what your addiction does is it camps onto your various traits, both empathic and narcissistic, and allows you to flex, particularly your empathic traits, because as an empath, that's what you want to do. You want to be the empath subconsciously, like the athlete who wants to be able to run around a track or throw a javelin, or a footballer who he doesn't want to sit on the substitutes bench. He wants to run around on the field. He wants to play the game. So you want to be able to demonstrate your decency and your compassion and your desire to heal and fix. And so you also, like any other human being, pursue pleasure as well. And so what happens is that the narcissist caters to all of those needs, fulfills the addiction, so your addiction gets fed. The narcissist, more than anybody else, caters to the empathic traits, because the narcissist will perhaps come along with a bit of a sorry story about how his or her previous partner treated them. So you show your compassion for them. Or they might be experiencing problems at work. So that gives you an opportunity to offer solutions. Or that they show a huge amount of love for you, and you may be a huge love devotee, big believer in the big L, and therefore that caters to that also. So your addiction's being catered for, your empathic traits are being catered for, and also your narcissistic traits will be catered for, because your pride and your vanity will be attended to, because here's someone who's come along telling you that you're amazing and you're wonderful and you're
Yeah.
gorgeous and you're sexy and you're fun and you're intelligent. So all of these hits are being made, across the whole scope. So initially, all your needs are being met in that respect, and you get the pleasure aspect as well. You may well have a narcissist, or many narcissists hypersexualized, so you're getting a lot of great sex. They might be looking after you, and you might be unwell, and they might be looking after you, exhibiting false compassion. They might be taking you to exciting places, which is fun and interesting. So at different levels, you're getting your needs met. Now, when it shifts, as it always does, as you know, the dynamic when you're an intimate partner, primary source, into devaluation, what needs are being met then? Well, your addiction is still being met. So you're still feeding it because you're still with the narcissist. Your empathic traits still have an opportunity indeed. Then it gets ramped up. The relationship isn't working. How can I heal and fix this relationship? I'm being lied to. How can I get to the truth of what is going on? This person seems broken. I feel sorry for them, that they don't understand that they're telling me lies and hurting me. I need to be able to help this person, compassion, and so on and so forth. That the devaluing behavior actually increases it. It also taps into pride. I'm not going to let this relationship fall by the wayside. I've worked too hard for this. It's not going to go down on my watch. So once again, the addiction is being satisfied by the continued interaction with the narcissist, and the various traits and the raison d'etre for the empath's existence is also being met. Now, you're not getting as much in the pleasure zone because the narcissist is withdrawn from you sexually, but you want to get that back. And of course, what the narcissist does is give you those respite golden periods. So it tastes all the sweeter. So then, when you think you've got the relationship back on track, that desire to heal and fix is being met because it seems to have worked, and you're getting the fun stuff again. So you're getting the pleasure back. So your needs are being met again, because at the end of the day, empaths are human beings that pursue pleasure. They're not this, they don't leave a monastic existence where they're beating themselves with a birch each night and denying themselves any kind of fun and entertainment. So at either stage of the dynamic, be it seduction or devaluation, the empath's needs are being met by the interaction with the narcissist.
And we know that your needs are being met, or the narcissist, by way of fuel. But,
Mhm.
I know this question comes up a lot, but I wouldn't think to put the kind of effort in to love bomb somebody, the gifts
Mhm.
that you have to buy, all the things that you have to do to create that initial false pull into the
Mhm.
relationship, and then also to sustain it.
Yeah.
It does seem like a lot of work. So it's just a necessity of the fuel. What I'm asking is how what's going on in your mind to the amount of work that it takes to actually ensnare someone?
Well, what you've got to remember is that for somebody such as myself, that's very well resourced, is a ruggedly handsome fellow who's urbane and interesting, charismatic, it's pretty easy for me to draw people in.
Mhm.
So it doesn't take a lot of effort. Also, add to that, I'm designed to do this.
I see.
I want to own people. I collect them.
Wow.
I have to fill that void, that howling wilderness that exists at the heart of me. I need to stave off the boredom. So I do that by collecting people. So that's linked to my psychopathy. So I need to collect people so that I can play with them, that they become my playthings. And I'm designed to go and do that. So, in the same way, um, let's take the Olympic swimmer. It was Michael Phelps, I think, wasn't it?
Mhm.
He was absolutely phenomenal when it came to swimming. Why? He was a freak of nature.
Yeah.
He was actually designed. He had huge hands and feet, and his lung capacity. Bradley Wiggins, the cyclist, his lung capacity was astonishing. He was a slip of a man, but he could just cycle and cycle and cycle because he was designed in a way to do that. Phelps was designed, in a sense, to be a swimmer. I'm designed to do those things. It's natural for me. In the same way, if I said to you, Doug, go and live in the sea, you'd eventually come wandering back to shore saying, I can't do it. I keep swallowing water and I'm hungry. I can't catch any of the fish. Whereas if it was a shark, there's no problem. Why? It's designed to live in the sea. So although it seems to a non-narcissist such as yourself that it's like a lot of hard work, It actually isn't, because that's what we're designed to do. And remember as well, when you're absolutely committed to something, when you truly believe in something, and people often talk about being in the
Mhm.
flow, whether you're writing or you're an athlete or you're making a speech or whatever it is, that you get into that flow where it just comes naturally. It doesn't feel taxing. It doesn't feel like hard work. And it's similar for us. The narcissism creates the concept of infatuation for the narcissist. This person is the holy grail of people. They are the best thing since sliced bread. They walk on water. They are amazing, fun, beautiful. They are all my Christmases and birthdays rolled into one. That motivates the narcissist to go to town on them. And therefore, it doesn't feel like it's taxing. Indeed, in the mind of the narcissist, doing all of those things, putting all of that effort in, it's well worth it. It is but a small sacrifice to land such a magnificent prize.
So what's going on in your head? Are you we know you don't love, right? And you don't really care about
Mhm.
the person. It's the fuel and the residual
Yeah.
benefits, but that's what's motivating you? Do you feel in your mind temporarily that this is the gift of your life? This is the one. This is finally going to be it. What's going on in your head in the initial stages of the love bombing?
Well, it's important to draw a distinction between me and and there are, of course, other aware narcissists like me, and the vast majority who are unaware. So the vast majority believe, in effect, what the narcissism is telling them. This person is the best thing since sliced bread,
Mhm.
etc., etc., etc. People often say, well, you look at the history of what's happened with your relationships, HG. This is people on my blog and YouTube, etc. So you can see that there has been this succession of relationships that have not worked out. So therefore, as an educated man, you would look now at this next relationship and think, well, it's likely to fail, isn't it? Because all the other ones haven't done. And the answer to that is no, because this person is going to be the
Wow.
one that finally doesn't let me down.
You really believe that too?
I believe that at the outset of the relationship. I believe that this, otherwise, I wouldn't choose them. If I thought that it was problematic in some way, I wouldn't. But then what happens is when it does fail, it's not as a consequence of what I've
I see.
done. They let me down. They kept something hidden from me. They didn't show me their true selves. And therefore, I see that they are the one that have failed and they have caused the relationship. And my response is entirely appropriate.
How on earth can you know all this consciously and still act the way that you act? Because you surely would have the logical knowledge, because you explain this so well in your videos
Mhm.
about what narcissists do and how it all works. There's not a part of you, obviously, that can't use that critical thinking and assume or know pretty well that the relationship would fail because of something you did, right? It it's so weird that you can know all about you and yet
Yes.
not kind of suss that it's going to fail, right? But it's never something that you did, even though you kind of know that. Do you understand what I'm asking, HG?
Yes, I
Okay,
understand. I
such a
understand
trip.
what you're asking. Yeah. Uh, the fact remains that when I choose that person, I've chosen them because to be the intimate partner primary source, because I anticipate that they will deliver. When they don't, it's down to them that's failed. I am a generous man. I'm intelligent. I'm good looking. I'm great in the sack. I'm entertaining. I'm fun. I'm well off. What's not to
I see.
like? I, with certain people, I will toy with them and mess with them because from the outset, I'm not interested in having a sustainable relationship with them. So there are those people that I purposefully pick in order to toy with. But when it comes to my intimate partner primary source, I do not select them thinking, well, I'm only going to select them because I'm now going to go and torture them. No, I pick them because I find them interesting. I find them attractive. They make me laugh. Thus, they alleviate the boredom for me, and I'm able to control them, and they provide me with fuel. So, therefore, they tick all of the boxes that are going to make the relationship work. So, as I've mentioned, There are some relationships where I don't care about it working. I just want to have my fun. I want to play with this person. I, in a sense, will choose somebody that I know that will fight me because I like it when they fight. It amuses me. It entertains me. I don't want a proper relationship with that person. I want to take them back and I want to bed them and then I want to insult them and send them away. And it amuses me when they get upset.
Wow.
And I recognize that people will see that as nasty behavior. Fine, you're entitled to that view. I collect that person, toy with them, but I don't want a conventional relationship with that individual. I want them to entertain me. And I gain entertainment by perhaps having lots of sex with them, or upsetting them, or calling them names, or belittling them, or ridiculing their lack of knowledge, whatever it might be. But when it comes to other individuals that I see a sustainable relationship in, I don't collect them thinking, I'm going to torture this person and make their life a
Really?
misery. I want them to be happy. I want them to have a fantastic time because I want to see it work. But it doesn't because they let me down
Always?
so far.
Still in the back of your mind, you have the hope that you can find that one empathic person that won't let you down, that will service all your needs and give you exactly what you want, right?
I don't sit dwelling thinking, oh, there must be somewhere out there where it's going to work. It works until it doesn't, and then I just move on to the next person. I don't preoccupy myself with thinking, oh, where art for thou, oh wonderful empath? Will you come into my life? It's quite simply of I identify somebody that I determine as ticks the boxes, and then think, yeah, I'm going to make this person my girlfriend, for example. So I draw them in. With somebody else, it's no, they're not girlfriend material, intimate partner, primary source material. So I'll have some fun with them. And it doesn't mean that necessarily when I have some fun with them, that means me being nasty to them. Sometimes I'll treat them really well, but I don't want it to go any further. And they're a bit upset thereafter when I say, well, no, I'm not interested, cheerio, or I simply don't respond to them and leave them on the shelf.
When you went to a Depeche Mode concert recently, just the other day?
I've been to several recently.
Those were great
Yes, when
videos,
I
by
was
the way.
thank you.
It's such a
Yes.
trip,
Yeah.
HG. Like, you don't worry at all about being found out or somebody, because there you are with the camera. Someone isn't gonna watch your videos. It was at the same Depeche Mode and go, I saw him. I know who he is.
I think I would be rather impressed if someone was able to work out that they were stood behind me from the camera angle on the videos that I put forward. And what I also did, for instance, when I saw them in Twickenham, I was quite close to the stage. So I took a couple of short videos, but for the most part, I just watched the concert. And I asked one of my friends who was in the seats to take the videos from there. So it's during a question of lust. So when I'm fairly close to Martin Gore singing, I filmed that.
Okay.
And the ones which are further back, my friend did and sent them to me because I asked him to do that for me. But the ones, and then in Krakow, again, I was quite close. So I took that video, but for the most part, I watched the concert. Whereas in Oslo, the angle that I was at was particularly good, and the elevation for getting quite a lot of footage there. So I would get sort of 30 seconds to a minute and then stop it and then continue with the concert. But no, I'm not concerned that somebody would recognize whereabouts I was. And I'm going to see some more of them. So I'm going to see them in Manchester in January. And I'm considering going to Birmingham as well in January. And subject to my professional commitments, I might try and get in some North American concerts in the autumn, fall, or winter. So there's a roughly a month hiatus now until they start off in Mexico City towards the back end of September. And then I would look in sort of October, November. I might, but I've got some fairly congested professional commitments, and that might preclude me. So it might be a case of looking at some more European dates, because one has to bear in mind that they're 16, 61 years old.
That's right, and they look pretty good too, man, and they sounded really good too. And you have good taste in music, by the way.
I have. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I think they'll have another tour in them after this one. I think they'll still do, they'll do something in 6 or 7 years' time, and that might be the last one.
Do you narcissists aren't attracted to a particular kind of artist and or music or film particularly. Just because you're into Depeche Mode, that doesn't say anything about Depeche Mode, does it?
No, it merely demonstrates that they're an
They
excellent
are.
band to have me as a fan. There are, interestingly, I recall, either in a comment on YouTube, Doug, or in a on the blog, that somebody said, "What is it with narcissists and Depeche Mode?"
Really?
And I said, "Well, what is it?" And this lady explained that she had a number of boyfriends, all of whom who liked Depeche Mode. And I said, "Well, I think perhaps you just are drawn to Depeche Mode loving
Is
narcissists.
there such a
I don't think there's
subcategory?
any." Yeah, it must be rather niche.
Yeah.
I don't think that there's necessarily any correlation in that narcissists recognize the themes within the music and think, "Oh, that works for me." You'll find narcissists liking all different types, and of course, one can have a wide range of musical tastes. There are other bands that I like, but I'm very picky when it comes to live music. I used to see a lot of live music when I was younger, but now I generally find that it's only really Depeche Mode that I'll tolerate an audience around me. As otherwise, I find people irritating in their behaviors. So I'm less inclined to bother. And also, although there's certain bands that I know quite a lot of their music, Depeche Mode I know inside out and upside down, from all of the stuff on their albums, their B-sides, their
Wow.
remixes, and so on and so forth. And in order to get that full experience, I want to go and watch someone that I really know. I've never really understood just going along and watching a band when you don't really know the
Mhm.
music. I know there's some people that do. I have a good friend, and he's a bit of a muso, and he'll think, "Oh, yeah, I've heard of this band. They're meant to be good. I'll go and watch
Yeah,
them."
I know.
And I think, really, just really doesn't appeal to me at all. I mean, for instance, he was with me when we were at Twickenham, and he'd wanted to watch the Young Fathers, who were the support band, where basically that just sounded like somebody locked in a trash can screaming. It was absolutely horrendous. Um, and I note that there's some of the support in North America. So unlucky. So anybody who's listening who's a Depeche Mode fan is going to see North America. Don't bother with the support. It's god awful.
Thanks for the tip, man. Now your friends
No
don't know
problem.
who you are, HG?
No, no. They just know me by my real name.
How is that even possible? You don't do you
Well,
go through extreme internet security and all sorts of things to make sure that your friends and or the public definitely doesn't find out who you are?
yes, where I undertake the work, for instance, what I do now, it's in a place where my friends wouldn't necessarily find me. So it's not like someone's going to come round. And even if they were, they can't sort of look in and go, "What's that on his screen?" or "Who's that he's talking to?" And they wouldn't be able to hear what I'm saying. So they wouldn't be able to find me, and they wouldn't be able to then, even if they did, work out what was going on. And everything that I do, there is nothing that is associated with my real name. I simply don't exist. There is
Wow.
nothing linked to who I am. Let's say I'm called John Smith. I'm not. But let's say that I am. There is nothing associated with that name anywhere about me on the internet. Just does not exist. Everything that's linked to what I do is done through proxy accounts. So even if someone was able to get that information, all they do is be able to get information about Mr.
I see.
ABC, and it's not me. So, and I'm well used to utilizing different identities for, linked to part of what I do professionally. So I'm well versed doing that. Indeed, in my private life, there are some people that know me by a name and they think that's my real name, and it isn't.
You obviously wouldn't tell me what you do, but you're not a I get the idea that you're either a spy or something in the military.
I can't
Yeah,
answer what
okay,
I do.
okay. That's a perfect segue though. Now that we've laid down some I was just testing HJ. Now that we've laid down some of the groundwork.
It's quite clear what I am. I am an extreme ice cream salesman. I am parachuted into high conflict areas with my freezer next to me to deliver mint choc chip at a drop of a hat.
Okay, maybe not a 007, but I do listen to the clues, and it seems like something military, but I know you're not even gonna give me a hint.
I have a range of
Okay,
interests.
okay. Always
Mm.
the intriguing, mysterious man. That's why I like
Well,
those videos, by the way, that you do with Depeche Mode, because it's like, who is that man behind that camera? There he is out in the open, but nobody
well,
knows who he is.
exactly, and that's part of the alleviation of the boredom that I find it entertaining. That,
I bet.
for instance, there was one of my clients who's long-standing, and she's a Depeche Mode fan, and she told me that she was flying over to go to the concert at Twickenham, and I said to her, "Well, I know what you look like, and I know your name." And I said, "It wouldn't be too difficult for me to find whereabouts in the stadium would be. Imagine if you heard this voice behind you saying hello, and saying her first name." And she was quite excited by the prospect of thinking that I might actually
Of
do
course you
that.
wouldn't.
And she said, "I was very excited by thinking that you were in the same stadium that I was, even though there was, what, 45,000 people there. So needle and haystack kind of thing." But she said she found it exciting. And throughout, she was half expecting to get a tap on her shoulder or to hear this voice, that I would find that she was there. And part of one's tempted to do that just because it's
I
amusing, but
bet.
of course it would compromise me to a degree. Hence, I didn't. But there is that aspect of thinking, yeah, people, there may be people walking past me who access my work and don't realize that they have. I think I may have mentioned this, that last year I stayed at a hotel, and when I spoke, the male receptionist, said, "My goodness me, what a voice!" And I said, "Oh, thank you very much." And he said, you sound like H.G.
No way.
Tudor."
Really?
"Mm, yeah." And I said, "Oh,
No
who's
way.
that?" And so he said, "Oh, is this guy on YouTube, etc." I said, "No, no, I've never
Tell me
heard of
more.
him."
No,
Well,
no, I could
yeah.
imagine
So,
you as the narcissist saying, "Oh, really?
oh
Tell
yeah,
me more."
what do you
Yeah,
think of him?
exactly.
Well, I would asked for it if he turned around and said, "Oh, he's a grade A arsehole. Actually, I can't stand listening to him." That would have shown me, wouldn't it?
I don't
But
think you
I
would have
wouldn't have
said that.
anticipated. No, I don't think so. And so he doesn't realize
Wow.
that he's actually met me.
Holy shit.
But again, it wouldn't matter because the details that I provided in that instance weren't my own personal details. So if he happened to be listening to
I
this
was just gonna
interview,
ask you that.
which I very much doubted, and he managed to think back to when that was and went into the system, he still wouldn't find out who I
Right.
was. Hence, that's why I can tell you about
Very
it.
interesting. Now, do you use the, because you told me you kind of put on the voice, so to speak, you have more of a flat intonation if you actually speak in your regular voice. Do you speak like this to get the ladies, to impress people, or do you change your voice back to more the normal accent when you're out and about?
Well, I have a naturally deep voice, so this isn't altered in the sense of it doesn't go through anything
Mhm.
electronic. So this is my voice that you can hear now. What I do is I utilize emphasis and intonation, etc., as you rightly point out, that ordinarily a flat effect would be utilized. But I realized a number of years ago that as part of fitting in, and in order to draw people to me, that it was necessary to do the imitation game and send that cherry picker off and find the voice that should be used. So it's so that the baritone that you
Mhm.
hear is mine, the stentorian tones that you hear is mine, but where my voice will go up and down for emphasis, that is in effect an affectation in order to fit in. So it's not that I've got a really high squeaky voice and I put some lead weights on my balls so that I sound like I've got a really deep voice. I have got a deep voice. It's just that I adopt a form of speaking, both conversational or broadcast, which avoids utilizing what would otherwise be a flat effect. And yes, I utilize this alternative voice when I'm dealing with people. Otherwise, if I spoke with the flat effect, it would be noticeable and it would hinder in terms of controlling people.
I imagine this voice would be somewhat intimidating, or because it's a great voice, man, and it
Mhm.
definitely is distinct,
Yes.
even amongst the British accents, so I imagine it would be relatively intimidating, or intimidating and or provocative. What's the response when you use this voice with the ladies out, or anybody that you're meeting out in the real world?
There are occasions where, when I speak, a head will turn and people will say, "What? Wow, I love your voice." In other instances, there's not necessarily a reaction, but a lot of people do compliment me on it in terms of finding it interestingly. It's People talk about it being authoritative. Many
Mhm.
people find it a voice that they like to listen to, that it helps them relax and
Yeah.
fall asleep. Not because it's boring; it's just that it's
No.
that steady tone that
Very hypnotic, HG.
yeah, absolutely, and that's something that's used to good effect. So
Mhm.
it's a weapon for me.
Definitely could see that, and like I said, you gotta get yourself a voiceover agent pronto, man.
I know, I know.
Okay, well, I guess with that background, thanks. That was really interesting, man.
You're
I
welcome.
guess we'll get into how someone gets out of an abusive relationship slash cult. So I was, as we talked about before, HG, literally under a spell,
Mhm.
and did all the things that you talked about. Once I was trapped in the relationship, not just with the cult, but kind of with my narcissistic mother, as we talked about before, it was completely normal, and that was my life. And then a friend from my acting class who knew that Scientology was a cult and knew I was in it. He actually wasn't a friend. He was kind of a jealous little asshole, to be
Mhm.
honest. And he wanted to get back at me. So he
Mhm.
dropped off a stack of books on my doorstep, and sitting at the top was this one. This is a new version, but
Yeah.
there was an old book called Combating Cult Mind Control by Steve Hassan, the number
Yes.
one best-selling guide to recovery from cults. He has this thing in here that's called the BITE model, which stands for behavior, information, thought, and emotion control. And it
Mhm.
was just that framework. The guy that wrote that book grew up or not grew up, but he was trapped by the Mooney cult, Sung
Yeah.
Young Moon. And he came up with this model where he was talking about other cults, because if he talked about Scientology, I would have just shut the book. I also
Mm.
knew I wasn't in a cult. So when my friend dropped this book off, I was going to go report him to the quote unquote church. You have to
Right.
write what they call knowledge reports. It's Orwellian, it's a snitching culture, right?
Yeah.
So because I was lazy that night, I happened to just open the book so I could cackle at my friend and make nothing of it. And then I come across this thing called the BITE model, which showed me that what I was involved with Scientology was exactly the same as the Moon cult, the Jehovah's Witnesses, the Mormons, etc. So what I'm saying is I snapped out of it in a single day and I had a heart attack. And this was
Mm.
in January 2008. And it took me until 2016, I believe, either late 2016 or early 2017, when I came across your YouTube channel, the old one that you had called Knowing the Narcissist. And as
Yes.
I told you before, that helped connect the dots of my narcissistic family dynamic, my
Yes.
cult leader with Scientology, and a Russian gal that I was dating at the time, going through the very thing that you were explaining in these videos. So I would listen to your videos, many of them every day, trying to
Mm.
figure out. I couldn't believe it. I was like, "Oh my god, I'm back in Scientology, but this is a one-on-one relationship type thing."
Yes.
Did you want to say anything on that, by the way?
No, no, please carry on.
Okay. So after it was a really long process, my man. It took about a decade, and I had PTSD, for lack of a better word. I would say CPTSD, because it was just such a switch. They call it snapping in mind control parlance. If your brain like switches right away and you see through it. At that
Okay.
point, well, since I don't want to make this about, I'm telling my story, but I'd like the listener to also be able to apply it to their life. And I know not everybody's listening is going to be in a cult, but
Mhm.
when you get out of something, well, is there a way? What I wanted to ask you is there a way, minus somebody dropping off a book? As you know, you can't really tell someone that's in an
Mm.
abusive relationship, because we talked about this last time. Hey, you need to get out. Here's HG's info. You're in a dangerous situation. What,
Yeah.
short of a miracle, quote unquote, like what happened with me, how would you is someone going to go through do they need to be shown gradually, or do you try to snap them out of it, or are they all going to go through kind of what I went through, where it was almost too extreme and my brain could barely take it? How do people get out of relationships like this, generally speaking?
What usually happens is that the narcissist has pushed them out of the relationship already by ending it. And therefore, many people are disengaged from, and they can't understand why it's ended. And they start to go away and look for some answers. Alongside that, there are those who, when the people are being abused in the sense of the traditional devaluation, if I can call it that,
Hmm.
where they wonder, why is he not answering my messages? Why is she giving me these silent treatments? So essentially, questions arise about what has happened. And in the pursuit of those answers, those individuals are likely to stumble across material on the internet because they have the advantage compared to, say, 25 years ago of
Yes.
being able to sit down and punch into Mr. Google, why is my boyfriend blowing hot and cold? Why is she not answering my text messages? And that will at some point take you in the direction of work about narcissism, preferably my work. And then, because that person wants to know, they start to realize, because when we talk about the escape, of course, there's the getting out of the relationship, but then there's also the staying out of it as well,
Right.
which is just as hard, if not harder, than the getting out aspect.
Yes.
Sometimes the getting out is quite easy because the
Yes.
narcissist has done it for you. They've ended the relationship. And then you find yourself struggling with keeping away. You want to confront them, you want to expose them, you want to get the answers, etc. But what is the common factor is the desire to know and to understand that then motivates that individual to go in the pursuit of answers. And that opens the door to understanding and heading towards escape, either escaping the relationship in the traditional sense or escaping the whole clusterfuck in terms of the aftermath. Prior to that, that person doesn't want to know. Prior to that, when they're being seduced, even though somebody else could say, that's my ex-boyfriend, he's a narcissist, now he's ensnaring you. Pointless. That person
I've
doesn't want
tried
to
that,
know.
HG. I've tried
Yeah.
that.
So, and even when certain things start to perhaps go wrong, they are not looking for the answers. They just think it's them that's caused the problem, or there are ups and downs in relationships, aren't
Yeah.
there? So there we are. So perhaps a worried parent who sees that something not quite right about his son's girlfriend and tries to intervene, he is not ready to pursue the truth. So the catalyst is the victim wanting to know. And then that provides the opportunity for either them or an intervener to say, have a look at this information. I think you're ensnared with the narcissist, and let them start to learn what all of that means. And as you found, and like so many other people do, that doesn't necessarily mean that it all drops into place overnight. Indeed, it won't. It takes time to extract yourself both from manipulative behaviors and their aftermath and the emotional thinking, which is trying to get you to stay involved with the narcissist. But the catalyst essentially is when that person starts to ask, why has this happened to me? There's the opening for them to start their exit, either themselves, so they go away and find the information and then come my way, for example, or they go and say to somebody, I don't understand what's going on in my relationship. This has happened and it doesn't make any sense. I want to know what's going on. The problem is that invariably the people that they speak to don't know about narcissism either. And therefore, they're just going and asking someone who then looks at it through the traditional lens and can't give them the answers. And that's why, Doug, it brings it back, as I've mentioned before, to the necessity of narcissism being taught in schools as
Exactly.
part of people understanding the nature of relationships, so that even if they don't come across it themselves, they're able to recognize it in other people that they care about, so that when that person turns to them and says, I'm having a problem with my relationship, they can then recognize what it is. It's a little bit like you've got a rash and you say to your friend, I've got this rash. What do you think it is? They're not a doctor.
Right.
So they'll just go, oh, I don't know. Is it off a nettle? or have you eaten too many strawberries and you had a reaction to it? I don't know. But if they have some rudimentary understanding of rashes, then they don't have to be a fully fledged doctor, but they might say, well, I think it's this, and you ought to then go and get it checked out. Or, no, that's not serious. Don't worry about it. They can almost sort of triage it. And there's the same with narcissism. When that person wants to know what's going on, that's the point at which they're ready to start their exit. It isn't the exit, it's just the start of the
That's
exit.
right.
But they need to be able to find the answers. And sometimes some people don't. But invariably, if they look on the internet, it will usually take them towards some provider of information. I'm not the only one, of course. And then they might, and it's increasingly the case, they might be fortunate enough to have a friend who knows a bit about it, having perhaps probably experienced it themselves, and they're able to turn around and say, it sounds to me like you're dealing with a narcissist. Well, what does that mean? And they say, well, watch these videos, read these books, rather than preach at them, say, here's the material, you go and look at it, so that they can take it at their own pace. Because if you try and tell somebody, it's quite difficult for them to absorb it all.
Right. And it can be a great gift figuring or finding that out or having a friend tell you, because like you said, your friends might give you advice or just hang in there or just try loving him more or give him a few more chocolates. But man, finding that right information, I imagine you have people come to you when they first start to discover this. It's like an incredible light bulb, life-changing moment sometimes.
Absolutely. Many of these therapists, advisors, well-intentioned family members, counselors, whatever title they might have, do a tremendous amount of damage by not recognizing narcissism, and will say, just as you've mentioned, hang in there. And they fall prey to the trite observations such as, well, let him go, and if he loves you enough, he'll come back. And then the
Right.
narcissist comes back and hoovers. And so she thinks,
Exactly.
it's worked. He's come back. Only then it goes wrong again. So what do you do next? Or explaining to somebody, love will conquer all. No, it won't. It won't conquer a narcissist, because the narcissist doesn't believe in love. Not really. They think that they do when they're an unaware narcissist. So all of these observations, and people fall down by adhering to these trite observations that are made about relationships, which are not applicable to helping somebody with a narcissist. When you identify that you're dealing with a narcissist, or suspect that you are, it's very simple. First golden rule of freedom: when you know, you go. You get out and you stay out. And that's all you need to know about it. Don't start thinking, are they or are they not? You're being abused. You know you are, because you're upset. You're asking questions about your relationship. This has been going on for months at a time. And therefore, all of the indicators are there. And so for somebody to point you in that direction and say, this is what you're dealing with, and that's what this information will tell you what it all means, they can then absorb that at their own pace, rather than go to somebody that tells them, oh yeah, this is the vagaries of a relationship. No, it's not. The vagaries of a relationship is when your husband loses his job at the factory and you have to tighten your belts, and you're a little bit off with one another because money's tight. That you stick together in those circumstances, because that's not anybody's fault that he's been made redundant. But if he's turning around and not talking to you every single night, and criticizing your cooking, and withdrawing from you sexually, and denying that he said things when you know that he did, those are indicators that there's something wrong. And you don't hang in to deal with that, because you can't solve it. Whereas if things are difficult between you because he's lost his job, you'll go and find a new one. And then once he's earning a wage again, things aren't as tight at home, and therefore that problem has gone. You hung in together, and it might be a little bit of boredom, having been together for 25 years, but that's all right. That's not abuse. You can push through it. But too often, the platitudes that come from those situations are applied to ones which involve narcissists, with very damaging effects.
Do sometimes people have to go through this multiple times to finally figure it out, HG? Because until I ran across your information, I had been out of the cult for many years, and then I ran across your information. There was a couple of key points that you made. First, once you know, you go, get out, stay out. I think that's brilliant, and you can remember it.
Yeah.
But that took a long time for me to apply. I can tell friends that do know about narcissists where they don't quite get the importance of it, there's no solving them. There's no fixing them. You can't grow a conscience back in somebody that doesn't have one. They can't grow empathy suddenly. And if you
Yeah.
haven't pegged as a narcissist, I kept getting rubber band back to the cult. I kept trying to compromise with my family. Mom, I won't talk out about Scientology if you just don't lay down the hammer or whatever.
Yeah.
I finally got it, dude, when you said in your work, I don't remember what you said. I just you drove home the point to me. Oh, I can't fix this person. I
Mm,
finally got it. So from here on out, well, I mean, I still, of course, run into narcissists quite often, but
mhm,
I apply that 100%, my man. It takes me a while. I'm kind of open, and then I
mm,
find out there's an agenda, or maybe that, you have to get to know somebody a little bit, right? I don't want to go around just dashing everybody out of my life, but I have a sensitivity to that that's growing. And
mhm,
once I know, I do go. I don't have anything to do with that person. No compromise, nothing, because I can easily get pulled in and
mm,
do the emotional thinking and justifying it. With the clients might not be the right word. The people that reach out to you for help, I
mm.
bet you constantly have to coach them or get them to go through many experiences where they finally learn that for themselves, right? Because we want to give the person another chance. There's always all sorts of justifications. Does it take going through this many times for it to finally frickin' stick, or can you get it right out of the gate with one bad
Most of the
relationship?
time, it takes multiple attempts. Some people are better at it than others. Um, for instance, there'll be some people that will not go back into the relationship and they will stay away from the communication, but then they're naughty in terms of snooping on the narcissist, and they
Right.
carry
That's
on
not
talking
good.
about the narcissist, and they keep thinking about the narcissist. So they're not having any direct involvement with the narcissist, but those are still breaches of no contact. And then there are other people who it really is the roller coaster ride, and I see repeatedly what can happen is, for example, somebody will come and they'll say, "Oh, HG, I've done well. I got some messages from narcissists, but I didn't read them." And I say to them, "Well, that's a little bit like you're a burglar and you've taken £10,000 from me and my iPhone and said, but I didn't steal your television, so I'm a good burglar, aren't I?" The fact is, why were those messages coming through in the first place? You know that they shouldn't. You should have changed your number, or at the very least blocked this person's number. So don't come expecting HG to give you some praise for having failed to read the narcissist messages. That's
They try
like
to
saying,
justify it in their mind.
well, they are, because it's emotional thinking.
Hmm.
That's their emotional thinking, which is basically saying, okay, some messages went through, not good, but hey, I resisted them. And it's like, and I say, you expect me to give you some praise for that, do you? In actual fact, I'm going to give you a mild telling off. And they're like, oh, right. I said, well, exactly. Because if you had ensured that those messages hadn't come through, there'd be nothing to read. And but that it takes them a moment to realize, oh yeah. And I say, that is your emotional thinking. See how insidious it is. It's got
Yes.
you thinking that it's acceptable to do that. And it's
Yes.
got you thinking it's acceptable to come and tell me and seek some praise for having done that. And so for some people, they will repeatedly get drawn back in by that emotional thinking. Some people are much better at it and they adhere to it. And there are some people who have the difficult situation of co parenting and they adhere to it. It's similar to people in a way who want to lose weight. Some people are more disciplined, they lose the weight, they do the exercise, and they keep the weight off. And weight management's easier than weight loss. And then there are other people that yo yo, they lose it, they put it back on, they lose it, they put it
Right.
back on, because of a variety of issues that influence them. And it's similar when dealing with the narcissist. Some people really don't try, they don't. Others do, and they do well for a while, and then something happens and it becomes derailed. But most people, it takes some time and effort. But once they do and they start to get that momentum, and so long as what I always explain to people is, if you stick with me and see out the course, I guarantee I'll get you across the finishing
Hmm.
line. And if anybody does that, they always do. What happens, because I can't force anybody to consult with me, what tends to happen is that I might speak to them 2 or 3 times and then they disappear. And I think to myself, I've not heard from them. I suspect they've probably, and then they come back a few months later. And they're usually pretty honest about what's happened. And they say,
Hmm.
yeah, I got sucked back in. And I thought, yeah, I thought that was the case. And sort of, it's a little bit like, again, similar to the weight situation of you've stopped interacting with your personal trainer. So you're not going down the gym and you're not dealing with your nutritionist any longer. So then you end up putting the weight back on and then you decide, oh, I'm going to stay out of the way. And of course, when people get dragged back in, Doug, their emotional thinking causes them to think everything's all right.
Exactly.
So
So
when you were
hard.
making the point earlier on about the way that I view relationships, a sort of similar thing happens for the victim. That they're fixed with all of this knowledge about narcissism. They've read it all. And then it's almost like they've been tipped on their side and it's poured out of their head again when the emotional
Yeah,
thinking comes along. And they essentially take leave of their senses because they think to
exactly.
themselves, oh, it's all right. I've sorted it out. I was wrong about him being a narcissist. And then what happens? They get devalued, and then they think, oh, and then they have that cold water thrown over their face, metaphorically, and they go, what happened? How have I got back in again? And it's almost like you go into a trance once again because of the emotional thinking.
Exactly. And one of the hard parts personally
Hmm.
is it feels kind of brutal. I do have a natural inclination to kind of do it because we had this thing in Scientology called disconnection, where it's a watered down version, an incorrect version of dealing with what they call suppressive people. Those would be what we call sociopaths, in terminology or whatever, narcissists.
Hmm.
So I got used to cutting people out of my life because they were harming my spirituality in Scientology. I can't have any evil influences around me. Anybody that said anything negative about the cult or just
Yeah.
whispered about it, they got to go. So I
Yeah.
did get trained in a certain way to be good at once you go. But
Yes.
now, since I got my empathy back after being out of the cult, it does feel bad sometimes, man. I hate not giving an explanation to a person that I've sussed to be a narcissist that I did have a phone calls and a relationship with, and now all
Mm.
of a sudden the phone calls stop. But I also know that I can't explain it to him. There's no point in engaging in dialogue, so it feels a little weird sometimes
Well, it
cutting
does. It
someone out
feels
of my life.
unnatural for It feels unnatural for
It
empathic
does,
people
man.
because
It feels mean.
yes, you are governed by and you always will be. You are governed by an emotional response first, and what you have to do
Yeah,
is it's almost like emotional Doug responds, and logical Doug then has to run after emotional Doug and put a hand on his
that's
shoulder and go, "Whoa,
exactly
whoa, whoa,
right.
whoa. Hang on, slow down there, cowboy," and explain to emotional Doug, "We're not doing that.
Exactly.
You have to stay away from that person." And emotional Doug says, "Yeah, but it's only right to let them know that I don't want to speak to them." No, you can't do that.
I
But
don't
why?
anymore, HG. It just feels weird, you
Yeah, well,
know?
it will do, but the more that you get used to it, and remember, of course, it's not everybody that you have to treat this way, and it's about reframing your mindset by using this logic to
Right.
say that person does not only is it adverse to my best interest to go and talk to that person, they do not deserve an explanation from me because they are a narcissist.
I like
Anybody
that.
else, in the grand scheme of things, they are entitled to it. So that satisfies your emotional empathy. But you have to train yourself to remind yourself that the narcissist is not allowed these things. It's as if they've been sort of disbarred from all of this by virtue of their narcissism. And you have to repeatedly remind yourself of that.
I like that, HG. I have been learning a lot, and the more I listen and the more I apply that, the more I do that with, the guilt falls away. It's
Yeah,
also about having self-respect, right? Why
it
why
is.
should you let somebody a lot of attracting or letting narcissists into my life, not least the cult coming into my life, was being beaten up by my narcissistic mother, man, and my
Mhm.
self-esteem was low. So
Yeah.
getting that back, you finally start to kind of say, well, I care about myself enough to not damage it by having this person come into my life. And if that requires not giving them a phone call or calling them back or blocking them, so be it. It's also about getting your self-respect back too, right? And your self-esteem that was beaten
That's
out of
right.
you.
Yeah, and recognizing that I am not going to be treated that way,
Yeah.
that I am not obligated to have a relationship just because that person is biologically linked to me if they're abusing me.
Right. It's so hard when you have families, I'm sure a lot of the people that you consult have to deal with family members, mothers and fathers, and that's where that's why it took me 10 years, HG, to get over the PTSD, because it wasn't just leaving the cult and realizing that was a fake reality I was living in my whole life,
But it's
but
linked
then
to your
dealing with
family.
my parents coming after me for
Yeah.
speaking out about the cult, and then
Mhm.
getting rubber band back to them because they're my parents and I love them, and
Well,
having to cut ties
people
with
are
my mom, you know?
people are conditioned by society, and they're conditioned by their emotional empathy
Always have
that
to love your
you
parents.
respect your parents,
Yeah,
and
bullshit.
you go and see them on Mother's Day and Father's Day,
Right.
and you check in on them at Christmas and Easter and all these things, and that you perhaps go and see them every week or every month, depending on the dynamic, and that you should have a relationship with them. Well, that's absolutely fine if that person's not abusing you.
Mhm.
But would you go to the local pervert's house and let him molest you? No, you wouldn't.
Right.
So why, just because that person is family, do you deem it acceptable to let them continue to abuse you? And that's the whole point. The emotional thinking gets hold of that label of mum, dad, brother, sister, granny, uncle, whatever it might be, and whispers, they're family. So you've got
Right.
to allow it. And you have to say to yourself, they are not my family. They are an abuser. And remind yourself of that. And of course, it isn't helped because often there are other family members who will then put pressure on you and say,
Yeah.
why are you not speaking to mum? And you have to, and those people may not be narcissists. And there you can assert a boundary with them and explain, if you wish to have a relationship with mum, that's between you and her. I have decided for my sanity that I can't do that. And I ask that you respect my decision. Some people will. Some will have something to say about it. "Oh, you're an absolute twat of a
I
son.
know, because
You
they
know,
don't understand.
she deserves better." And they may even say, "I know she can be a grouch. I know she can be a whinge, but she's our mum." And there's a difference between having a parent who occasionally grumbles about, "You don't come and see me as often as you should." That's not abuse, but you know when that person's being abusive, and use the appropriate response is you cut them out. And often I hear when people consult with me when it's a familial situation and say, "But I can't. It's my dad." And I
Yeah.
go, "You absolutely can." And that's why my package, How to Handle a Parental Narcissist, which also applies to adult children, etc., is so useful in telling you what you need to do to deal in that situation and how you can reframe the relationship and alter your mindset and the steps that you can take.
Perfect. And to the listeners, I will definitely link the parental package in the description box. And we've been going for an hour now, HG. So this has been another fascinating conversation. And I guess
Mhm.
this is a perfect time to kind of wrap up.
Sure.
Could you please tell people, in addition to the parental package, what you offer and where they can find you? And again, I will link in the description box on my channel everything that you discuss here.
Okay. But what I offer people is that if you're entangled with a narcissist, that's going to be cause pain. And I'm the method of taking that pain away from you. I am the painkiller.
The doctor.
And yeah, come and see Dr. Tudor. But in effect, I will kill that pain for you through an array of information. You can go and read information on my blog at narcsite, narcsite.com. You can listen to that work on my YouTube channel, which is HG Tudor, knowing the narcissist, the ultra. You can go to the Knowledge Vault, which you'll find in the menu bar at narcsite.com, where there are 250 products which deal with all various facets and aspects of dealing with narcissists. You can use the detectors to find out, are you dealing with a narcissist? You can use the empath detector to find out what you are and what that means. And you can organize an audio consultation to speak to me so that I can give you the bespoke help that you deserve, applicable to your own personal situation, and explain to you what you need to do. You can see all the testimonials of all of the people that I've helped, millions through reading and watching, the thousands through direct involvement with me. And it's very simple. Your win is my win, and therefore it's a joint enterprise to get you across the finishing line. And as I mentioned earlier to Doug, if you do what I tell you to do and work as in the way that I explain to you to do, you will get away from that pain, and it will just become a distant and unpleasant memory.
I'm a testimony to that. I honestly don't know what my life would have been like if I didn't run across your information. I was in a really dangerous situation when I happened to come across it. So, HG, really, I appreciate the tremendous amount of work that you've done over the years to help people. And it's
Mhm.
so ironic that a narcissist could save and help so many people, but I really freaking appreciate it, and I know thousands
You're very
do
welcome,
as
Doug.
well, man.
Yeah.
Okay, enjoy the rest of your day. Let me know when you're hitting a
Yes.
Depeche Code concert. I'd like to go there and find out who the mysterious man is behind this voice.
I'll send you my seat number. You can then hunt me down, huh?
At least give me a shot, man, to figure it out because, one day before you shuffle off this mortal coil, it would be
Mhm.
really cool to actually know who this man is who's helped out so many people, man.
Right.
Anyways, HG, until we, talk again, I hope we do. I'm already looking forward to it. Have a good day, my friend.
You too. Thank you, Doug.
Thanks, HG. Bye.